Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was the Red X. If you guys enjoyed this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Jump City. Naruto stands atop Titan's tower with a deep frown on his face, looking to the sky for a moment with narrowed eyes. You seem troubled. Cher noted as she walked onto the roof and looked at him strangely. Turning slightly, the blonde scoffed for a moment before reaching up for his hat. Throwing the object from his head and off of the tower completely, he then turned away from the winged woman with a deep frown stretched across his face. Not at all Tenchi-san, I'm just evening the playing field with all fire puss by making a little deluge. He replied before forming several hand seals and holding up his hands towards the sky. Ukajizai no jutsu. The blonde cried out as he spread his chakra into the air, the clouds darkening and gathering above, causing Cher to look up only to widen her eyes, as it began to rain upon the entire city, much as it had the week before. You can control the rain? She questioned, and Naruto silently turned around, removing his sunglasses at the same time, and unintentionally causing the woman's heart to briefly stop. The Rinnegan eyes were not something she had expected. In pictures she'd seen a clear azure blue as the color of his eyes, but she was also aware of the Sharingan that the ones known as Sasuke and Kakashi were supposed to have from reading a report on them. But the eyes of the blonde were completely different from those eyes, something about them just put her on edge. Yes, and so much more. Naruto replied coldly while forming a familiar T-shaped hand seal with a frown. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto cried, causing three more of him to appear before he looked to them seriously. Spread out across the city, you know what to do. Naruto ordered, and the three clones nodded before they each vanished in a plume of smoke. What was that? Cher demanded while looking to the blonde-haired teen, and Naruto silently turned and sat down, legs crossed under himself, and took a deep breath. What that was doesn't matter. What does is that soon our enemy will show himself, and I wish to be prepared for that event. Naruto stated simply and then held one hand forward, concentrating on the Omega X. He had the plates at his palm shift away, and then threw his arm to the side. Kusanagi no Tsurugi. The blonde exclaimed, the familiar blade tearing its way through the flesh of his hand, where he quickly gripped its hilt as the plates on his hands reformed over his palms. Leaning the blade along his shoulders, Naruto ignored Cher's presence as he felt the Kusanagi speak to him. Master, 'tis good to be outside once more. I prefer the battlefield to being hidden away like an old relic. The Kusanagi hissed into the blonde-haired teen's mind, and Naruto merely hummed for a moment while opening his eyes. He's here. Naruto whispered while looking to the ground below, Slade crawling out of the water around the tower, steam rising off of his form. Naruto slowly stood up as Slade approached, the titans rushing past him and jumping from the tower to the ground below. Looking down at the scene for a moment, Naruto then turned to see Batman, Dr. Fate, and even Jason Blood walking out of the tower. Slade, we're ready for you. Nightwing declared while pulling two of his batarangs from his belt and gripping them tightly. Instantly a pair of blades shot out from them, making two swords each of which he in one hand. Give me the girl. Slade ordered in a no-nonsense tone, and Nightwing narrowed his eyes onto the man. No way. Kid Flash declared boldly, the rest of the team getting ready to combat the masked madman. You don't really have a choice in the matter. I'm taking her. Slade stated darkly while glaring at the teens, Beast Boy scoffing as he did. Oh yeah, you and what army? The green jester demanded, and Slade reached up with one hand to obscure his face. The S-shaped rune on his forehead began to blaze even as the rain hitting his body steamed. Instantly the dozens upon dozens of fire wraiths appeared and formed all around the titans, Beast Boy gaping as they did so. You just had to ask, didn't you? Cyborg muttered to himself while looking at the vast number of enemies around them. Attack. Slade ordered while pointing to the titans, the teams lunging into action while Naruto cracked his neck. So it was you who made the rain? Batman guessed, and Naruto was silent as he then stepped off of the tower and towards the ground below. Frowning for a moment, Batman looked to the Justice League members with him with a frown. Ready? Batman questioned, and Cher didn't answer. Instead she lunged into battle, followed by Dr. Fate as Jason took a deep breath. Change. Change, O form of man. Release thy might from fleshy mire. Boil the blood in the heart for fire. Gone. Gone. The form of man. Rise, the demon Etrigan. Jason exclaimed before his body was consumed by fire, grasping his head as he was changed as well, a pair of hellfire red eyes soon glowing from the flames, before Etrigan roared loudly. The new being had ruddy orange skin, two small horns forming off his head, a pair of fin-shaped ears, sharp claws and fangs, and a gaunt face. He wears a red outfit that covers his torso and the upper portion of his legs, leaving them bare from the mid-thigh down. With a black belt around his waist, black bands with studs around his forearms, a blue cape with a silver clasp, and a pair of old faded red boots over his feet. Nice to see you again, Etrigan, though I wish the situation weren't so dire. Batman noted simply and Etrigan merely grunted before lunging into the fray, slashing at the fire wraiths with his claws while Batman jumped down behind him. Then reached into his belt and pulled out a pair of electrical brass knuckles. As soon as they landed, the Justice League Unlimited lunged into action, attacking the fire wraiths, while Naruto passed them all, moving to the side to avoid Nightwing as Slade sent him flying. Walking towards Slade while the Titans and Justice League Unlimited dealt with the fire wraiths, Naruto felt lightning surge down his right arm before quickly dispersing it. "Oh, Mr. Uzumaki, how nice to see you again," Slade noted upon seeing the blonde-haired teen, only to stop when he saw the almost deranged-looking eyes that the blonde-haired youth now possessed. "Although, perhaps I should wonder about those new eyes of yours," Slade stated aloud, and Naruto silently stopped before the man and closed his eyes. One of his clones in the distance, having finished gathering nature chakra, quickly dispelled itself. "Senjutsu. Sanin-moto," Naruto stated flatly, only for a burst of power to flow off of him, as two spikes of hair raised up form his head-like horns, red-orange markings, then appeared beside of his eyes, and over his whisker marks. Slade narrowed his eyes as white bone-like armor began to form over the blonde. First it formed into a pair of wind-shaped greaves and forearm guards, then 6 Magatama beads formed around his neck. A series of spinal plates formed down the back of his coat before branching out into 10 links that ran the length of his coat, giving the illusion of 10 tails. Finally, a white bone-like mask formed over his face, this one only covering the left side of his face. "I see you're pulling out all the stop this time," Slade noted, only for Naruto to vanish in a flash and land a powerful left hook to the man's jaw. The force of the punch sent Slade flying across the bay, skipping over the water for a time before he threw his hand back and created 2 jets of flame from them. Propelling himself back to the island, Slade rammed into Naruto, however the blonde dug the Kusanagi into the ground and rammed his arm into Slade's back, plowing him into the ground. Growling lightly, Naruto then grabbed Slade by his bandolier and lifted him out of the ground, holding him in the air with one arm and a deep scowl on his face. "I am done playing around with you," Naruto exclaimed furiously while twisting on his heel and throwing Slade into the air. Growling lightly, Naruto twisted into a Makukaten first before adding a 1000 blades jutsu together, forming a swirling torrent of spinning wind blades Tatsumaki no Jutsu. "Tornado technique," the blonde exclaimed loudly as the dozens of blades began to rip and shred Slade into pieces while he was still in midair. Soon enough Naruto landed on the ground and threw his arms out, dispersing the wind and sending the dozens of individual pieces of Slade flying apart. However, not long afterwards, beams of heat flowed into the air from the pieces of Slade and connected together. The beams of heat then drew the man's body back together, Slade grunting as he reared back his completed arm, and formed a sphere of flames into his open hand. "Come now, you didn't really think it'd be that easy, did you?" Slade mocked coldly while throwing the ball of fire down towards Naruto, the blonde-haired teen slamming his forearms together and freezing the rain falling towards him, causing a shield of ice to form over his forearm guards. Growling lightly as he blocked the fireball, Naruto dug his feet into the ground and threw his arms to the side. Throwing the Kusanagi into the air, Naruto then smirked as he remembered one of Orochimaru's jutsu with the weapon. "Kusanagi no Tsurugi. Ku no Tachi," he exclaimed, causing the blade to obey his command and fly towards Slade before spinning around like a buzzsaw as it approached him. "This is just not my day," Slade thought to himself, even as the flying sword ripped through his body before turning around and slicing through him a second time, as Naruto caught it in his outstretched hand with a deep frown on his face. Falling to the ground in several piles, the one-eyed man then reformed once more and slowly got up and glared towards Naruto. "Keep this up, boy, and your little secret will be out in the open for all to see," Slade noted aloud, and Naruto merely looked back and smirked when he saw Cyborg powering up several weapons on his body. "Looks like I wouldn't have to," the blonde noted while vanishing in a plume of smoke, reappearing with the Titans and the Justice League Unlimited. "Fire!" Naruto shouted, and Cyborg roared while firing 2 massive cannons from his arms towards the man, while also tearing through the remaining fire wraiths near him, falling to the ground with a groan. Cyborg looked up with the others, the Titans gaping as Slade appeared unharmed, snapping his neck back into place while Shiera gripped her mace as more and more fire wraiths started to pop up around Slade. "As if we didn't have enough problems," Shiera noted while Latrigan growled and lunged forward, soon followed by Naruto and the others, lunging into the fray and wildly attacking both the fire wraiths and Slade. Naruto mentally twitched even as he ran towards Slade, forming a Rasengan into his free hand, and ramming it into the man's head when he got close enough, shredding it to pieces before landing in a low crouch behind him. Twisting on his heels, Naruto then sliced Slade's legs out from under him as the Titans and Justice League Unlimited tried to deal with the never-ending amount of fire wraiths. "Haven't we gone through this before?" Slade questioned as he reformed his body and turned to face a deeply scowling Naruto. "You can tear my body apart, but you can never destroy me," Slade reminded, only for Naruto to grab the man by his neck and glare at him furiously. "Me destroying you is going to be the least of your problems, Slade. Do you honestly believe that Trigun is going to help you? He's a demon." They betray anyone they make a deal with and turn it back on them. Naruto shouts at the man, and Slade narrowed his eyes before slamming a sphere of fire into Naruto's gut, sending the blonde flying back before skidding along the ground. Grunting, Naruto twisted the Kusanagi in hand and dug it into the ground, sliding back to a halt before he would have fallen into the ocean's depths. Growling angrily, Naruto got up and lunged at Slade with a roar, only to slide to a halt as Slade threw his arm to the side, revealing the titans held by the fire wraiths. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Slade noted darkly, and Naruto growled lightly, then saw Etrigan, Batman, Cher, and Dr. Fate back down as well. "Now then, drop your weapons," Slade ordered flatly, and Naruto frowned before dropping the Kusanagi to the ground, Cher doing the same with her mace, Batman dropping his electric knuckles to the ground as well, while the masked madman chuckled lightly. "Stop," a voice cried, and Naruto turned to see Raven walking out of the tower. "Kar-chan," Naruto wondered before shaking his head and giving the girl a look. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Naruto demanded as the girl neared him, and she stopped briefly to look at him sadly. "What I need to do in order to protect my friends," Raven replied, and Naruto gaped at the girl as she flew over to Slade and stood before him. "I will go with you," she told the man, and Naruto clenched his fists while walking towards her. "Are you out of your pretty little mind?" the blonde-haired youth demanded while walking towards her, unaware of the gravity sporadically increasing and decreasing around him. "Please, you must return to the safety room." Starfire tried to coerce, and Raven shook her head, only for Naruto to stand before her and glare at her. "For once I'm with her, even if you go with this guy, chances are we're all still going to die when Trigun comes. It's better for all of us if you stay safe, at least that way the big red fucker won't rain Armageddon down on our collective assess," Naruto reminds, and Raven sighs while turning to the blonde-haired boy and giving him a look. "Maybe, but I don't want their last moments to be spent fighting. I can't hide from my destiny any longer," Raven stated before quickly throwing her hand forward, black lightning bolts stretching from her hand and into her friends, Naruto and the Justice League Unlimited. The lightning crackled and arched around all of them, knocking all but Naruto out completely and laying them on the ground. Groaning as he looked to Raven for one moment longer, Naruto then passed out as well, Raven looking to them all silently. "Goodbye, be safe," she whispered before walking over to stand at Slade's side silently. "Let's go," she stated simply, and the two walked off, past a sea of fire wraiths, and leaving all of them behind. Jump City. Orochimaru stood with a frown while looking to the eclipsed sun, his snake-like eyes narrowed dangerously. "Now I wonder what new apocalyptic event is about to occur." The man suddenly wondered to himself, arms crossed and an amused smirk crossing his features. He'd done a little research on the history of this world, and wasn't surprised when he found dozens of apocalyptic events had occurred, only to be thwarted at the last second. "I really must speed up my research. If only I had my original notes," Orochimaru thought to himself, while turning and walking into a building with a deep frown across his face. Among other things, he'd also broke into a place called Cadmus recently, and stolen every file from them that he could. Doing so had been almost painfully simple, given his years of experience with infiltration and stealth. "Yet again, something I share with Naruto-kun," Orochimaru mused to himself with a sinister grin crossing his features as he entered into his lab. Unlike his lab in Odo, or any of his previous labs, this one was completely sterile and clean. He'd taken a note to do so when he saw that bacteria and germs could have an overall adverse effect on certain serums and the like. It also made it a mite sight easier for him to keep track of his notes, something he found useful. He actually couldn't fathom what had made him use such grungy, dark, and dirty labs in the first place. Well, the only thing being that he was going to be using whatever he created on the field, which would thus cause a similar reaction. However, at the moment he wasn't trying to create a chemical weapon. Instead, he was going back to the basics of shinobi and chakra. He needed new hosts, and while bringing his chakra from body to body was part of the jutsu, he needed to make sure that the body could also survive the transfer. He'd been lucky when he possessed the man he currently resided in. He was a bit of a health nut from what Orochimaru could tell. This had helped the man's body resist falling apart, as Orochimaru was forced to force chakra coils to develop just to inhabit the body. The process was as painful for the host as it was for Orochimaru, which was another reason he wanted to go around it, as he disliked pain immensely. However, Orochimaru wanted to be careful in this world, thus he needed a body that was in peak condition, and could develop chakra coils fairly easily. Thus the man had started his research to do just that. However, besides himself and Naruto, and possibly Tsunade's apprentice Sakura, there was no one who had chakra coils. And he didn't possess true DNA from their world, so couldn't study it without attempting to find one of the two. Naruto would be easiest as he did have some capabilities as a sensor ninja, just not to the great extent that Karen girl had been too. Orochimaru also made a note to find some worthy candidates to train as soldiers' bodyguards like he had with Odo. None of those worthless henchmen he saw working for the villains of this world, but true warriors hand-trained and able to fight off more than a couple of police. Unfortunately, before he could do that he'd need to be able to make normal humans capable of using chakra. And while he had an intimate knowledge of the DNA of his people, due to his research and study, Orochimaru knew he couldn't simply recreate the effect. Instead, he was going to have to find a supply of DNA from a chakra user who was still in his original body. And as he knew before, there were only 2 candidates in that regard, neither of which would be very interested in giving him their blood, so he could create an army. Frowning to himself, Orochimaru sat in a seat and drummed his finger on his table. In the words of the Narumen, how troublesome. Orochimaru grumbled out before swiveling in his chair and closing his eyes silently. He was aware that something big was coming, yet he was also aware of many other things. After all, one doesn't come to be nearly unkillable like he was without learning many things. What will happen next? I wonder. I sense something, possibly more powerful than little Naruto-kun on the horizon. This should prove most interesting. Orochimaru mused to himself with a twisted smirk as he sat back, relaxing silently and awaiting what should be the end of days he was sure, but would also be stopped. This world was just predictable like that. Titan's Tower. Naruto pushed himself up with a groan, and then shook his head as he got back to his feet. Looking around, the blonde narrowed his eyes upon the eclipsed sun in the sky, with a deep scowl across his face. If you think I'm letting that red fucker take you away from me, you have another thing coming, Card-chan. Naruto thought darkly before noticing that Batman was up as well, rubbing his head, while Shiera looked like she had a migraine from hell. Why haven't you guys gone after Card-chan? Naruto demanded of the Dark Knight, and Batman stood up and then walked over to the side where Etrigan appeared in a burst of flame. Know where she's going? Batman questioned, making Naruto blink as the orange demon nodded his head. Yes it is, the place is known. For she goes to the demon's throne. The demon replied in a rhyme, causing Naruto to have flashbacks of Kira Baiwai. Why are there so many things similar to my world, yet so radically different as well? The blonde-haired teen had to wonder before walking over to the two with a frown. By demon's throne, I'm guessing you guys mean that one giant hand we found the other day, right? Naruto questioned of the Dark Knight and the demon Etrigan with a frown, only the demon looking to him. Yep. Batman replied simply, and Naruto nodded his head while turning around. That's all I needed to hear. The blonde then stated while lunging forward, running across the bay and towards the city proper. Frowning for a moment, Etrigan narrowed his eyes on the retreating blonde before looking over to Batman. Knight of Darkness, what have you unfurled? The boy holds power that will end this world. Etrigan stated in another rhyme, Batman raising a brow for a moment before ignoring him as Nightwing, and the others began to come too. Slade stands within a ring of fire with his arms folded behind his back, Raven having started on the path to her destiny on her own. Something tells me that will be the least of my worries soon enough. Slade couldn't help but think to himself, while looking up to the 4 crimson eyes of Trigun hovering within the chamber of rock. The portal approaches. The hour is near. It's time for my payment. Slade states simply, and Trigun appears to gaze at Slade in confusion, Kyuubi snickering to itself at the sheer and utter stupidity of some mortals. Payment? For what? Trigun questioned while narrowing his eyes onto the one-eyed human dangerously. The gem returns of her own free will. You did not deliver her. I did. Trigun declares while looking down at the one-eyed man, Slade growling lightly, even as he feels the ring of Azar on his ring finger lightly. We had a deal. I held up my part of the bargain. Slade reminded while glaring up at Trigun coldly, his slate-grey eye glaring into Trigun's 4 hellfire eyes. In response to the one-eyed man's declaration, Trigun laughed darkly while looking down at the one-eyed man. Roaring out in fury as Trigun laughed at him, Slade formed a fireball into his hands before hurling at the demon's eyes. He then quickly conjured more and more of the fireballs, and began to throw them at the wall where Trigun's 4 hellfire red eyes glow ominously, glaring at the man coldly. I granted you these powers, and I can take them away. Trigun declared as a pair of arms made of fire reached down and formed at Slade's sides. The one-eyed man was then lifted into the air, a beam of red energy crackling between the 2 hands, and ripping something out of Slade. The one-eyed man cried out as the S on his forehead faded away, the ring of Azar on his finger glowing brightly, even as Slade vanished completely from sight. Finally, I thought you'd never get rid of that little pest. Kyuubi commented while Trigun chuckled lightly while the hands of fire rose back up into the ceiling. He was a useful servant, but now his usefulness has ended. The time for our freedom is finally upon us. Trigun declared while fire rose up all around the cavern, Kyuubi grinning darkly as it looked to the other demon. Indeed Trigun, and I am certain of one thing, freedom will taste sweet. Kyuubi noted aloud with an almost insane laugh, Trigun unconsciously shivering as the ancient demon, even more so than he, grinned with a more sinister light than any mortal could possibly achieve. Library. Naruto swung the Kusanagi, sending a blast of wind that ripped through several fire wraiths. His shoulders were hunched, his hands clenched, teeth gnashed together, and a dark glare in his eyes. You stupid freaks think you can keep me from Card-chan? Naruto questioned before opening his coat, and then changing the Omega X suit to its basic setting. The armor of his suit quickly unfolding from the suit and over his spine, then both his forearms and shins, along with the bright crimson red X over his chest. Well, you've got another thing coming. The blonde then declared while his mask literally unfolded from the suit and formed over his head, the bright red X on his mask glowing as it snapped shut. Growling darkly and throwing his arms back, Naruto activated his thermal blasters and swung his arms forward, beams of heat tearing through the walls and fire wraiths around him. Narrowing his eyes, the masked blonde then crouched down before lunging forward, running down a flight of stairs and forming several explosive X shuriken as he tossed them down the hall. The shurikens exploded upon impacting with the next few fire wraiths, Naruto lunging through the flames and sliding to a halt in the room with 3 doorways. Right, now which one was it again? The masked blonde wondered to himself and then narrowed his eyes on the dragon seal over the door to his right. That one, he declared while running into it. His eyes narrowed as he formed his thermal blasters once more and aimed forward at a horde of incoming wraiths, firing the weapons and destroying them for the moment as he then lunged forward, twisting on his heel into a jump out of the passage into the demon's throne as Etrigan had called it. Landing on the ground in a low crouch, Naruto narrowed his eyes as dozens of fire wraiths rose between him and Raven. Believe me when I tell you, you really don't want to get in my way. Naruto growled out darkly even as he twisted around on his heel, extending the blade of the Kusanagi to slice the majority of the fire wraiths in half. Twirling the Kusanagi in hand once the wraiths were out of his way, Naruto then put the Kusanagi on his back, using his chakra to adhere to his back without a sheath. Marching forward, Naruto stalked past more and more fire wraiths as he approached Raven silently. Somehow, I knew you'd come after me, Raven noted while turning to look at the blonde with a sad smile on his face, Naruto's mask slipping back as he approached. Yeah well, even I couldn't imagine you actually coming here to die, the blonde noted while the Titans and Justice League Unlimited came into the room behind him. Took you guys long enough to get here, the blonde noted to himself while looking over to the Titans, only to turn back to Raven with a frown. Behind the blonde, Knight and the other Titans moved towards Raven, but Batman held out his arms to stop them. Wait, give him a chance to talk some sense into her, Batman ordered and got a glare from Nightwing as his response, only for Naruto to walk up to Raven. Listen Kar-chan, trust me when I say I know what you're going through here. The whole destiny thing is a major mindfuck, but you don't have to do what some damn prophecy tells you to, Naruto tells the girl seriously while walking towards her, the violet-haired girl shaking her head. Looking up afterwards, Raven drew her head down and gazed at the still eclipsed sun through a high circular skylight. It's already begun Naruto and there's no stopping what's meant to be, the girl told the blonde, and Naruto scoffed while grabbing her shoulders and glaring into her eye angrily. Kar-chan, you can't give up everything like this. You still have a chance for a life, you just have to make the choice not to give in, Naruto told the girl, and Raven looked down and sighed once more. I'm not like your friend Ichi, nor am I like the Shion girl, Naruto, this is my destiny, I've known since I was a child, Raven replied before turning around and looking to the demon's throne silently. I've tried to control the dark side of me, I tried to do good things, to fight evil, and hope that would make up for the horrible thing I'm destined to do, Raven replied while looking to the eclipsed sun once more, and then turned around and gazed at Naruto evenly. You had a destiny as well though, so you should know that better than anyone, Raven reminded, and behind the two, Batman raised a brow in interest as he saw Naruto flinch visibly. The prophecy foretold the coming of a child who would bring a great revolution to his world, either to save it or lead it into ruin. That child was and still is you, Naruto, Raven reminded pointedly, and Naruto frowned deeply while crossing his arms over his chest. That certainly explains his comment from earlier, Batman mused to himself while watching the exchange from a distance. The Dark Knight was also painfully aware that Naruto and Red X were actually one and the same. However, it wasn't because Naruto was bad at hiding who he was. Anyone else would buy the act, as Nightwing proved. The odd social twitches, the movements of his body, vocal patterns, and many other minor things were too obvious for the Dark Knight to miss. The fact he had seen Naruto in Gotham on the same day Red X appeared in town merely cemented his reasoning on the matter. However, judging by what had been revealed by Slade, Batman could also see Naruto was essentially an inversion of him or Nightwing. An anti-Batman of sorts, right down to his past, which was too similar to his or Nightwing's for his tastes. One key difference, however, besides Naruto's berserker rage, was that he had no one to turn to afterwards. He had had his butler Alfred to help him, and he had helped Nightwing. Naruto had no one to help him with the pain he'd been alone. And while he'd normally take Naruto in, 1, he had no way of doing so as no charges were put up, and 2, the Titans actually needed Naruto. He showed them the grade that lay between right and wrong, good and evil, life and death. The grade that few heroes chose to acknowledge because they were so caught up in their own glory. He also reminded them that they were only human, they had flaws, and they were fallible, something many heroes never learned. Superman still had problems learning it, and he'd been doing this almost as long as Batman himself had. It often led to a hero breaking down when they failed to save someone. Many heroes had hung up their cape after such an event, even he had done as such once, but Hopperfully X could remind them they still had limits, and could still grow stronger. Shaking those stray thoughts from his head, Batman narrowed his eyes as Naruto looked at Raven with a frown. That doesn't matter and you know it. Naruto stated simply while inhaling deeply and gazing at Raven softly. Destiny and fate are the same thing. We make our destiny with every choice. No one knows what the future may hold, and no one knows what will happen next. But I do know one thing, Kara-chan, the only reason you'd cause the end of the world is if you choose to do so. Naruto declared defiantly, and a small sad smile crept onto Raven's features as she gazed to the blonde-haired teen. You're right, there were things I didn't know, like how I'd make such wonderful friends. Raven said while looking over to the Titans, and then blushed slightly while looking to Naruto. Or that I'd fall in love. Raven whispered while backing away, and Naruto gave the girl a look. Then make your choice, Kara-chan, it's still your destiny, but don't think that'll be the end of it. Naruto replied, and Raven smiled sadly as she created a black force field between herself and the others. Cursing, Nightwing and the Titans ran forward, just as Raven brought up her hood with a sad smile directed towards Naruto. I know. She replied in kind while turning around as several stones started rising up like mock steps, the Titans ramming into the force field. The Justice League Unlimited ran over to it as well, Cher roaring out as she slammed her mace into the shield, narrowing her eyes as it wavered for a moment yet still held firm. Etrigan, Dr. Fate, can you bring this down? Batman demanded, and Etrigan looked over to Dr. Fate, the man mumbling something under his breath before firing a beam towards the field, while Raven drew closer to the hand. The Titans continued wildly attacking the field as well, Etrigan breathing out a burst of hellfire towards it, as Cher slammed her mace into it as well. While they didn't break it down, Naruto saw it waver and closed his eyes. Feeling his last clone dispel, the blonde opened his eyes and silently activated Sage Mode before lunging forward. Growling lightly, Naruto forced some nature chakra into his claws and dug them into the field. The attempt seemed to work as his claws managed to pierce the barrier, allowing the blonde to slowly pull on it. Gritting his teeth as he did so, Naruto soon managed to pull open a tear in the field. As he did, Raven came to the palm of the massive clawed hand, then sat cross-legged and took a quick breath of air. The Titans looked to the blonde in slight surprise as Naruto did so, only to turn back to trying to break open the field. Batman on the other hand looked around and narrowed his eyes as he noticed the wavering field. The gem was born of evil's fire. Raven started while Beast Boy's eyes bolted open, only to look to the side, as Naruto managed to fit his head through the tear he made in the obsidian black field. Dude, he's actually doing it. Beast Boy exclaimed in shock, while Naruto managed to get one arm through the barrier, before then pushing on the tear with all his might. The gem shall be his portal. Raven continued while making a hand sign with her right hand. Keep hitting it, the integrity of the field is weakening enough for him to pass through. Batman ordered and Cyborg formed his Sony cannon, blasting into the field with Etrigan and Dr. Fate. Starfire following suit with her eye-beams as Cher started to lash out at the field with her mace once more. Growling as they did, Naruto felt the field give way once more, and roared as he rolled through it, exiting the field only for it to slip shut behind him. As the field did, red runes ran the length of Raven's body, forming a familiar pattern over her body. He comes to claim, he comes to sire, the end of all things mortal. Raven finished before throwing her arms to her sides, teeth gritted as the runes flowed off of her body and spiraled around her into 3 rings of runes, one above her, one below her and a final ring around her center. No? Naruto, you have to help us get through as well. Night ordered only for Naruto to turn with a frown, the red X on his chest plainly visible and Nightwing's eyes widening in shock. Sorry kid, that isn't my style, and there's no more time left. Naruto told the dark-haired teen before shimmering for a moment, only to reappear and grab Raven in a hug, an amused smirk on his lips, while the violet-haired girl stared at him in shock. Now did you really think you could get rid of me that easily? Naruto quipped as he smirked at the violet-haired girl's wide-eyed look. However, his own eyes then widened as numerous red markings started to appear over his own form. The spiral on his navel was where they started, but a marking under it made the spiral resemble a tomo, a spiral on either shoulder, 6 tomo marks circling his neck, a long trail leading down from either of the spirals to a spiral on his hands. 3 red stripes on either cheek over his whisker-like marks, and a spiral on his forehead finished them. But dude's like, is that supposed to happen to Nar as well? Beast Boy asked loudly, even as the other Titans could only gape at the spectacle in shock, as the spiral on Naruto's stomach started to swirl inwards, deepening into a black circle. Finally. The time for my freedom has finally come at long last. And your own foolish emotions have finally led to your ultimate defeat. The Kyuubi's voice echoed somewhere in Naruto's subconscious, as the seal holding it began to fade, allowing it to ram through the gateway that had held him back for 19 long years. Kyuubi, what is this? What the hell did you do to me? Naruto inwardly demanded while gritting his teeth as his Rinnegan eyes turned blood red, a slitted pupil appearing in them. Be such a fool to have not figured it out yourself, Gaki. But I'll explain it to you since you're still so slow. It is I who has aided Trigun with his resurrection. Did you forget that I am a demon as well as a fox? And as you told Slade yourself, Gaki, never trust a demon. The Kyuubi declared loudly before a deep evil laugh echoed in the dark recesses of the blonde-haired youth's mind. How? You're trapped in the seal. Naruto demanded of the beast, and it laughed once more even as Raven and he both grit their teeth, the red runes on her body glowing brightly as a red ring of energy formed around them. Foolish Gaki, everything you have done up to this point has been part of our plan. And to think, it was on the day you first met with your precious little Card-chan that your end truly began. The Kyuubi stated darkly even as the energy ring around Naruto and Raven shrank, and both teens started to vanish. Yes, it was all so simple. You really are too predictable, Ninjin. All we had to do was ensure you and your precious Card-chan grew close to one another, and we knew you'd sacrifice life and limb to save her, ending with this happening. Kyuubi continued explained while Naruto grit his teeth. Both he and Raven reduced to their shoulders, head and feet. To achieve this goal we merely needed to help your little romance go along. Trigun was the one who implanted the urge Raven had to get to know you, and I did the same to you for her. Afterwards, whenever the chance to push you two together presented itself, we helped. Trigun allowed Rage your passion to show her feelings for you while I kept you alive. You dying would have ruined all our hard work after all. We were also the ones who have so graciously caused the mental bond between you two when I took some of Raven's power that day. The beast said laughingly as Naruto and Raven were torn apart at their midriff before flowing over their bodies. And to think that in the end you never suspected I could be so treacherous, and that it actually worked is what makes this all the sweeter, Gaki. Killing another Rakuto Sannin is merely a bonus, but one I will cherish always, I assure you. Your foolish emotions have always been your greatest flaw. Only it's different now because now you'd literally walk through hell before watching another precious person die, thanks to that worthless wench, Kushina. Kyuubi continued, and Naruto inwardly growled while a tear formed at the side of his eye. So you used my emotions for Card-chan to get yourself out of the seal, you fucking fox. Naruto growled at the demon inwardly as he grit his teeth as nearly all of his body had already faded away. Come now Gaki, you remember the story of the fox and the wolves. How the cunning fox tricked his way to freedom to hunt for himself. The Kyuubi stated ominously, causing Naruto's eyes to bolt open as he truly understood its meaning for the first time. Yes Gaki, you are not the fox, I am the fox, and you are the wolf. Over the years I have suffered indignity after indignity at the hands of the wolves, the Uzumaki clan who have contained me for so long. And now finally, after waiting for so long, now when you've grown complacent to my presence within you, or rather, you became lazy and content with it. Only now do I claw my way to freedom, to hunt for myself once more. The Kyuubi analyzed before laughing loudly as Naruto and Raven completely faded away, a circle of energy forming where they had been. Dude. Beast Boy exclaimed, as the trio of runes swirling in the air were all that was left of either Naruto or Raven. However, those runes did not stay idle as they suddenly came together to form into a ring. However, the ring then exploded forth, flames at its rim, while appearing to be a disc of some kind. The disc continued to grow, causing those watching to shield their eyes from the bright light it created. The strange disc destroyed the altar it had been formed over, and caused flames to trail up to the walls to the ceiling. Within the strange disc a swirl of red and orange energy starts to spiral inwards, only Dr. Fate moving to look on. He has come at last. Dr. Fate whispered before quickly chanting and casting an energy field around himself and Cher, Etrigan snarling as he watched, a frown on Batman's features as he clenched his fists. The shield Raven had erected earlier finally gave way completely as true horror entered into their world. A hand was the first sight, then another, and strangely, two more clawed their way out of the portal, Dr. Fate's eyes widening as he saw a pair of beasts rather than one. The first was a 50-foot tall, four glowing red eyes, a red gem on its forehead in the same position and shape as Raven's own, long white hair, antlers forming off its head like a crown, bright red skin being with black stripes at its shoulders and ribs. A pair of black armored wristbands covered its forearms, much like the kind Raven took to wearing. Its legs ended in cloven hooves. It also wears black briefs, a white loincloth worn over top it, and a black armored piece over his midriff. Is there supposed to be two of them? Kid Flash demanded with white eyes as the second beast crawled out of the portal and let out a loud roar into the night. No, there's not. This is something else, perhaps something even more sinister than Trigun. Dr. Fate replied with white eyes behind his helm, as he actually recognized this beast's basic shape and form. Though it still differed greatly to the ancient demonic incarnation of pure evil he'd seen in one of his books. The being climbed out of the portal silently, tails thrashing about as it did so, and causing wind to twist and turn. It was just as if not taller than Trigun himself, with the body of a fox, though its upper torso more closely resembled a human's, having hands and arms replacing its frontal paws legs, two crimson red eyes with black slits at their center. Bright orange fur with black stripes leading from around its bloodshot eyes into its long almost rabbit-like ears, black claws adorned its hands and hind paws, and 9 long thin tails lashed out at the room around it, tearing the walls of the roof down, while it roared out loudly. The Titans in Justice League Unlimited looked on silently as both Trigun and the Kyuubi then glared down at them ominously. Fire roared and twisted all around the demons, as Trigun raised his arms in triumph and breathed the air, as if savoring the smell of freedom for the briefest of moments. Meanwhile Kyuubi shook his body as if it were wet, and given his previous home, this wasn't so strange. The Earth is ours. Trigon suddenly declared loudly, the Kyuubi roaring at his side as they both glared down at the humans before them silently. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.